So here it is, Applied Horse Psychology. Now, this book was kind of a joke whenever I got it. I actually initially intended to just mail this to the McElroys. Um, the My Brother and Me podcast makes a lot of jokes about horses. It makes jokes about horse psychology and what are horse emotions. Apparently, horses experience something called anger too, a type of anger that we humans can't even do. So that was much joked about on that podcast. And then I chose to keep the book. I don't think it's really worth mailing to them. I don't think that I think they've got bigger things to do than react to this one-off book that I bought. And I'm actually just kind of interested in what's in it. And then apparently my husband used to work at an equestrian bookstore, so whenever he saw this book, he kind of cursed a bit. Um I want to read the back of this book just to give an idea of what it's about. And now, why do I consider this to be a cult? I put it on the occult book club playlist. Largely, it's because there's something called the Horseman's Word in occult secret societies. The horsemen were actually considered to be a secret society amongst themselves, and it was the and when I say horsemen, I really do mean like people who kept horses. There was apparently supposed to be a secret word that you could whisper to a horse, hence the horse whisperer. And when you whispered the secret word to a horse, the horse would do asked. You could actually ask it to tell it to do things in human words, and it would simply just do as you directed. I don't know if the actual horseman's word functioned as thus, but the horseman's word was supposed to be a word. This word that you say it to a horse. It works like that, and this is what you would call an oral history. Um, a lot of the ways that secret societies keep their secrets is that member to member they simply like say things like, "Hey, the secret word is this. Remember that. Don't tell anybody unless they're in the organization and you're on your deathbed." And like the secrets that are passed on the deathbed, these are the type of secrets that are passed on the deathbed. So like a magician would like who knew the horseman's word would like say it to their apprentice whenever they were in their like dying moments. But it's like you don't pass this down until you're on your way out, kind of stuff. Which, of course, by the way, is a very dangerous way of keeping information because most people don't know when they're going to go. And there's quite a possibility that you won't pass down this information. So we don't, no one has the horseman's word on record, of course. It could be just a myth. It could just be a story to sound cool, or it could have actually been a thing. I actually kind of wonder if it's more about they talk about how you're supposed to whisper it to a horse. Well, if you have you ever whispered something to a horse? No, you haven't. I knew it. I knew you hadn't whispered anything to a horse. Well, when you get down to whisper something next to a horse, you're probably going to do it like this. And I think the horseman's word is less about an actual word that you say and about telling you you need to get in this position with the horse for it to trust you. Or like there's something that you probably do physically whenever you're leaning in against the horse. And that probably um, gives the horse like more physical ability to trust you. Wow, I'm having some real amazing light effects in here. Let me adjust the lighting a bit. That's about all I can do. So sorry for that. Anyway, I guess I should actually talk about applied horse psychology instead of just all the stuff that I kind of know off the top of my head. About the author, Marion B. Williamson is one of those horse people, in quotations, who never really got to enjoy horses until she was a working adult and could afford to buy one. The daughter of an Episcopalian minister, she was born in Lexington, Kentucky, but her family moved to Florida when she was 3. Oh, I'm sorry, honey. She began taking riding lessons when she was 5 and rode whatever she could, like with friends and at summer camp, but her parents would never buy her a horse because they thought her love for horses was just one of those kid things, and she would get over them as she got older. This is about the author. This is on the back of the book. We're going through childhood trauma here, but she didn't. Marianne has always been interested in training animals, and she operated a dog training school when she was in junior high school. She always had been interested in psychology. She worked with problem school children while she was still in high school. Later, she studied psychology at the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida, while holding down a job for 9 years as a computer programmer and systems analyst. Private tutoring and music teaching led her to see many parallels between teaching children and horses. In recent years, her interest turned to training horses and freelance writing. She writes fiction for children's and women's publications, as well as articles for horse magazines. After submitting several articles to Horseman magazine, which dealt with the psychology of training horses. Okay, I have got to get at least one copy of Horseman magazine, and I need to get one that has one of her articles in it. Just bucket list. She was asked to write this book. Marianne moved from Florida to a ranch in South Texas in 1974, where she now raises horses as well as Nubian goats. Marianne B. Williamson. Is this woman still on this planet? Because she sounds really interesting. Marianne B. Williamson. Author of Applied Horse Psychology is the author. Mother Earth News. Not seeing date of birth and death immediately listed. So I don't know. I'll have to look up some information on her later to kind of track down, see where she went, because I mean she was working in computer programming in like the 60s and 70s. I want to talk to her about that. So let's see. Applied Horse Psychology, second printing, June 1977. Copyright 1974 by Cordovan Corporation Publishers. Houston, Texas. It's in the Library of Congress. Cover art by Chuck Burkard. Introduction. Horse psychology is an important key to understanding and training the horse. The whole field of psychology, animal and human, can contribute theories and principles which are effective tools for the horseman. Ethology, the study of animal behavior in the natural habitat, provides information on what the horse is basically like. Animal psychology itself has generally neglected the horse in favor of smaller, cheaper to keep animals such as rats, pigeons, dogs, cats, guinea pigs, monkeys, and chickens. Even without the problem of expense and space, the horse makes a poor laboratory animal because he does not adapt quickly to laboratory conditions. Among other things, the horse is sensitive and needs the security of companionship, human or herd. It can take a horse weeks to settle into a new home, and until he is settled, he won't be acting like himself. This phenomenon is the reason that bad horses stay in circulation. Well, like a nickel with a dent in it? Like in circulation is... How does a horse stay in... How do you circulate horse... Okay. Moving on. Even the finest trainers get burnt now and then. It takes at least 6 weeks to find out what you really bought. Ah, I see. This is about getting a bad horse. I get it. You don't really know what you got. You can't, there's no good quick way to evaluate a horse. I'm an outsider of this world. I've never bought a horse and I probably never will. Apparently I need to look it in the mouth before I buy it. I know that part. Unless it's a gift horse, then there's no point, right? Many of the principles developed in child psychology apply to the horse as well as to children and certain other animals. During the past several years, I've been experimenting with retraining spoiled horses as well as raising foals. Spoiled horses. I guess that's what they call a horse instead of a problem horse. All right, come here with me. I am typing into Google spoiled horses. Spoiled horses. Spoiled horses, allowing your horse to bump into you, nuzzle you for treats, and nip at you creates a spoiled horse. Okay, spoiled horse like a spoiled kid. Acts bad because you're not acting with enough discipline. I have spoiled cats. Who knew? Spoiled horses. As well as raising foals. I've been like the clinical psychologist, using principles of psychology to help my patients, the problem horses. Ah, yes, okay, there are problem horses. Spoiled horses are one subset of the problem horse. I have taken these principles and my experiences and organized them into this book because I want to pass along the benefits to my fellow horsemen. I hope to see much better than deathbed words is this book. I will say the reason why you had stuff like deathbed words, the reason why you passed on these secrets in only to your apprentice and only to the chosen person and only to like one person is because all professions used to be incredibly competitive. And if you had a secret that helped you do the thing, you kept that. That was going to be your livelihood. If anybody else's secret out, then they might get the job instead of you. If there's only one royal horseman, if there's only one horse master to the king, then you don't want anybody else knowing what it is that you know as horse master. And I learned this because apparently this is what happened with mathematics. Mathematicians, court mathematicians, you only have like one court mathematician. There's very few court mathematician jobs. So you're all competing for like the same really, really good job. You're not going to let them know how you solve that theorem. You're not going to like let anybody else know what your math tricks are to be able to do math. It's like any kind of trade secret, really. So the thing is, that's not as useful in horsemanship now, apparently. I mean, it may be useful in some places, but when it comes to these types of things, she's not finding that it's useful to keep these as her trade secrets. She's finding it's more useful to let everybody know so that horses can benefit. Which is like putting the horse first. So I like that. This is like a horseman's word of a book for horse psychology, which is great. Actually, one of the things about books in the last 100 or 200 years, I'm not going to try Microsoft 365 family for free. F off. The books in the last 200 years, when it comes to in the occult, they are kind of like all the horseman's word. It's like all of a sudden we all decided like, hey, why don't we just put it in a book instead of like trying to tell somebody on our deathbed? Great idea. Now I can read it instead of being there at your deathbed, which would have gotten real crowded. So, association, attitude, and habits. The principle of association is operating during every phase of training or using a horse, and it is but a significant factor in shaping his attitudes. It is a subtle but powerful force which can work for the horseman or against him. Basically, what happens is that the emotions experienced during an activity or in a certain place can become associated with those specific circumstances, so that identical or similar circumstances call forth the associated emotions even after a great lapse of time. Humans will often notice this sort of thing. A child who was once bitten by a dog may always fear dogs, although not remembering why. Hearing a special song can bring back old emotions in full strength. On the other hand, a stimulating teacher who can give the student a feeling of achievement and progress might, by association, inspire a lifelong love for a subject. Unfortunately, once an association is created, it is very difficult to change. The student who is turned off on school may be beyond the help of even the best teacher. The person who was frightened as a child by getting a shot may dread doctors and needles for the rest of his life. He may irrationally avoid seeing a doctor, though seriously ill. The green horse is in the same boat as a child. The adults have absolute power over him, and he can't understand the why of anything. He is very impressionable, and first associations are lasting associations. There are two basic sets of attitudes which vitally affect the training of any animal. The first group is approach avoidance feelings associated with every phase of training. Things like food, water, companionship are inherently pleasant, and the animal's approach feelings toward them are a strong natural drive. On the opposite side, pain, discomfort, and mental confusion are definitely to be avoided. These feelings readily become associated with the acts or situations which produce them. This is the basis of reward and punishment. In its simplest form, an immediately rewarded act by association is rewarding. An attitude of approach is generated, and the animal will tend to repeat the act. An immediately punished act will be, by association of the punishment, an act to be avoided. Now, what's interesting is that this actually overlaps with the Eighth Circuit model, which was actually contemporary with this book. This is a 70s book. The Eighth Circuit model was a 60s and 70s theory of psychological development. And the Eighth Circuit model can actually apply to pretty much all mammals to some extent. Some of it. I'm allergic to that. Give me just a moment. I need to blow my nose. Whew, pardon me. Wasn't expecting a nose explosion. So, The first circuits are common to the development of like all mammals, and later on it gets to be what they assume is human specific. And to be honest, none of us can prove whether it's human specific. So what I'm looking for is the first circuit. I've got Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson here. I'm just going to go ahead and cross-reference the oral biosurvival circuit. Any multicellular organism must, if it is to survive, contain a hardwired biosurvival circuit, which very simply programs an either-or choice: go forward to the nourishing and the protective, or go back away from the threatening and the predatory. Any mammal hooks the biosurvival circuit to the first imprinted biosurvival object, the teat, or the mother, and like, because that's going to be a mammal that says any mammal, but you can actually get this biosurvival circuit, like it's this kind of idea, at least, of, good thing go towards, bad thing go away from. You can see that in insects. So it's more like the nest or the safe space is kind of like the thing you go forward towards, and then whatever it is that's danger, you go back from. And the thing is, because that's the first circuit that's ever imprinted in the brain, according to the 8-circuit model. According to general psychology, they generally acknowledge like one of the first impressions you get of like comfort, and the first impressions that you get of pain, these are very foundational like memories, and they kind of set your expectations of the world from then onward. That's why the earliest moments and the earliest years of upbringing are just so vital for establishing everything about a person, because it's the foundation that you're built on. So that circuit, because it's the first, because that's like kind of the first impression we ever get, and it's the building block that everything else is built off of. If you manage to access that circuit and re-imprint, you can kind of reset everything that's built on top of it. It's not that everything goes away, it's just that because it's so foundational underneath everything, it will affect everything that's on top of it. When it comes to horse psychology, apparently they're operating from working on the first circuit, which is like offering comfort or food or other things that something inherently wants to go towards, and then discipline or punishment would be the thing that it wants to get away from. So it's like establishing the pole arms of the first circuit. One interesting thing is that this is like a lot of the same psychology between horses and humans, but since horses are domesticated animals, like that's very sensible. Like a lot of the same psychology is going to exist between the two of us, because humans have in so many ways tried to make horses into like kind of humans. Same with any other domesticated animal we have. We've given them some of our features in several ways, and they're different than the wild versions in those ways. Let's see. The colt who is handled and disciplined gently will reflect this attitude in his relations to others. After rounding up the dog, the colt only pokes at him gently. No matter how rough the game, he is careful of the dog's safety. Oh, okay, that's cute. It's a dog and a horse. There you go. We have cute pictures in horse book. Being able to pet or groom a green colt all over and lead him around quietly is an even bigger accomplishment than riding him later. Shows that the greatest obstacles have been overcome, and it paves the way for later work. Therefore, it is only natural that the most time and care will have to be spent to accomplish this simple-sounding objective. Quiet lead line behavior from correct socialization is a different story from the show colt who has been trained by force and requires halter chains to control it. It is possible to train a young horse by bullying him into obedience. The successful trainers who take this approach use bluff rather than cruelty. The animal becomes socialized to repression, and no matter how educated he gets, he will only understand and respect this approach from humans. The horse himself will be a bully to anyone who is not bullying him. This is the horse who is a willful mess for lesser riders, but works like a charm for anyone quick, athletic, and experienced. I had a 12-year-old mare like this. She was very well broke, quiet, and gentle, but she would only give a good ride to someone who who she knew was quick to get mad and punish. Otherwise, to a more easygoing person, she was a constant pain in the neck. So she's passive aggressive. So if they're socialized to repression, they become passive aggressive. This is interesting. I'm seeing a lot of parallels between like humans and horse here. So yeah, part of what I was wondering was there going to be much overlap, especially because this is like written in the 70s from like, experience of that time, and there's a lot of anthropomorphization going on in like humanities regarding nature. Now we've got like almost like the exact opposite going on, where everybody wants to like completely just like de-anthropomorphize everything. And it's not that I think that's a bad thing. It's more that I think that there's a certain extent to which that can't be done, because we are humans, and therefore we are literally looking at the world and experiencing the world through a human shaped lens. And so I think just respecting that lens instead of immediately trying entirely trying to counteract having that lens might be a better idea. I wish that we could talk to some other species that wasn't human to get their perspective of things, so we would know what the difference is between viewing the world with a human-shaped lens sentiently and viewing it with any other kind of lens. But we don't have that right now. We do have our domesticated animals that we live with, and they can give us a lot of commentary, but still, we've kind of human-shaped them, because if they weren't human-shaped, they couldn't live with us. And so it's like, the quandary, will we ever be able to communicate with anything that is shaped completely differently than us? Or will we always be stuck in this dissimilarity that makes it impossible to communicate? I mean, with horses, they don't really know what is going on whenever we're trying to get them to do all these things. They don't know what result we're trying to bring them towards. They just kind of experience all of this and try to make as much sense of it as they can. And if we figure out how they try to make sense of things and we guide them through that, then we can possibly train them to where they can be used to humans better. But it's two different species interacting. Like, at its core, these are two different species interacting. And it's really neat to look at someone trying to gain an understanding of how horses think and feel and trying to teach that to other people. I'm going to try to get to more about learning. Here we go. Learning by association, contiguity training, and behavior modification do not seem to require the active mental participation of the animal. With these methods, the horse appears to learn almost automatically and unconsciously, as if he is being programmed by the trainer. Of course, the more intelligent horse still learns faster, but even the slow horse will get there eventually. This makes behavior modification ideal for basic training, since the desired behaviors are already part of the horse's natural behavior set. As the horse's training becomes more advanced, some of the more behavioral objectives become more complex, and the method of teaching them no longer exactly fits the behavior mod viewpoint. Instead, the trainer is trying to make the horse get the idea of what he wants. From a good foundation of basics, the horse has to come up with something new. Like building an AI, when you're teaching the AI how to make something, or basically telling the AI, hey, make something and figure out how to do it. Figure out how to make this thing. No, you didn't quite do it right. Try doing it different, and then eventually it figures it out on its own. But you don't really know what happened in there. You just know now the output is like you wanted. We don't know what in brain of horse. For example, one time I was riding through an orange grove and the owner's German Shepherd kept barking and nipping at my horse. The horse was getting upset. I decided to take the offensive and teach the dog a lesson. I wanted to chase the dog home. I turned my horse around and kept him aiming after the dog. The dog ran around trees, hiding and trying to resume the rear position. With rein and legs, I kept my horse going after him, but it was very awkward. After a few minutes, my horse got the idea and went after the dog with a minimum of help from me. What a difference it made. Then it was easy to chase the dog home. It cured him of chasing horses, too. So once the horse learned you're trying to go for that dog, it just went for the dog. It knows what it means to go for the dog. It just has to get there. Opening gates is another task where it shows when the horse understands the job at hand. The intelligent horse needs hardly any guidance, whereas a dull horse may always have to be cued for each little step. Sounds like a dull horse has trouble remembering a sequence of steps. Or I wouldn't say dull, it just means that for some reason this horse doesn't remember step sequences very well. There could be all kinds of reasons for that. I'm not here for horse ableism. I'll tell you that. Let's see. Learning which requires insight on the horse's part is very dependent on the personal skill of the trainer. You must be able to put the horse through a simulation of the activity without upsetting the animal and defeating his purpose. He has to work intuitively. A lot depends on the horse's intelligence and aptitude for the work. For example, some horses could never become roping horses or polo ponies. Some horses could never become roping horses or polo ponies, and that's not their fault. Don't try to make them into something they're not. One of the most common mistakes the inexperienced person makes is trying to teach for too long at a time when a short session would have been more effective. Oh, yeah, that's one thing that I definitely get wrong. If the trainer quits while he is ahead, even if there seems to be no progress, he will get the benefit of latent learning. After a good rest, the horse will show progress as if the lesson has soaked in despite the seeming failure. Yeah, so struggles are a sign of learning, not a sign of rejecting the learning. Pushing a horse to the point of boredom or rebellion can take the edge off his willingness and undo a lot of progress. A session which is too short may be inefficient, but it will not hurt anything. You don't end up causing a bad association memory, which then gets in the way of them accessing that learning. Learning by imitation is a very useful tool with horses. Horses have a strong sense of identification and awareness with other horses, which makes them susceptible to modeling. Most of the animal experiments on imitation have been done with dogs, without much success because dogs are relatively egocentric and unaware. Much of the difference in horse and dog training comes from the fact that it is hard to get a dog to pay attention, whereas the horse, from natural insecurity, is trying to be aware of everything around the trainer. So with dogs, they're so relaxed that they're not paying attention by default. With horses, they're so anxious that they're not relaxed by default. Horses kept in a stable are always learning some little trick from each other. My filly was next to a lock-picking gelding. He fiddled with his gate latch a lot, opening and closing it. Soon the filly was opening her latch. She was not mechanically inclined, and she never tried any other locks except the one she learned from her buddy. In this same way, bad habits like weaving or wood chewing can be spread through an entire barn. Interesting. So, I've learned so much about horses. I really like this writer. This is kind of fun. Oh, here's the big horse hug. Here's the photo it comes from. Hugging is an important step in overcoming the foal's instinctive fear of restraint. I see. So it is important. See, I think that this is more the origin of the horseman's word than I think it was physical stuff like this. It's hard to, this isn't intuitive. This is the kind of stuff I think that you teach someone. That is the big secret. I really have to see if I can find some Horseman Society type publications. I don't know if there are any. At least find some kind of book that mentions it to just get some more details, because I've heard about it from several sources, but I don't know a whole lot about it. And I just kind of feel like there must have been some survival of this type of group of people. It sounds like there's probably something of them in the trade, I would think. Anyway, so that's Applied Horse Psychology by Marion B. Williamson. If you like this book, I don't wonder if it's still in print. I will probably edit the video to have a link in the description so that you can check out where you can get this. I ended up picking this up by a whim. There were so many other psychology books I was looking at. but Applied Horse Psychology was there. It had this cover on it, and it's so cute, but also kind of like this. It looks so self-published, but it's because it's from like the 70s where you didn't really have to quickly make a cover for a book. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm gonna cut this one now and see you later.